Roll for Initiative, Chapter 2. Legend of the Blue Monk. Noble's gem's ears twitched in response to a faint skittering sound, instantly waking her. The noise was familiar. It always meant trouble. Crusher, however, had missed it. He was still sitting by the fire with his back to the bedrolls, oblivious to the approaching danger. "Everybody, wake up!" Noble's warning came just in time for Sorry Sparks to see a dark shape descending toward her. She rolled to the side, still wrapped in her bedroll, moments before the giant spider landed. "Driders?" Crusher immediately leapt to the action to cover his companions, but his axe glanced off the spider's chitinous exterior. It turned to face him and lashed out, biting deeply into Barbarian's leg and injecting its poison into his veins. Lighthose reached for her gear, but was immobilized by a web before she could equip anything. Shortly found herself stuck in a bedroll. Double Gem played a lively tune on her lute, which would, with any luck, help her friends get loose. The spider continued its duel with Crusher, steadily wearing him down while sustaining very little damage. Every bite weakened the Barbarian further, and he soon collapsed, unable to continue standing under the weight of his armor. Fortunately, before the enemy could deal a lethal blow, Light and Swirly managed to free themselves. Without bothering to grab any armor, the paladin charged in and swung her sword at the spider, but failed to penetrate its armored hide. The sorcerer struck true with a glob of acid, which sizzled on his chitlin. While the damage was minimal, her attempted diversion was a success. The arachnid turned towards them, biting the unarmored paladin with ease. The poison failed to take hold, however, and Lighthouse blade found its mark with her next attack, gouging deeply into his carapace. The spider shifted its attention and went after Noble Gem. She was relatively defenseless. The foe stepped on a rock with one of its 8 legs, which rolled out from under it, causing it to lose its balance and fall to the ground. Was this a fine opportunity presenting itself? The bard could not let it pass unexploited. She smashed her lute over its head. Moments later, the spider was standing again after striking off a round of attacks by Light and Swirly. The paladin was quickly disabled by another web, and the sorceress took a nasty hit while trying to defend the helpless bard. Suddenly, a new voice ran through the darkness of the forest. "Have no fear, for the great and powerful Trixie is here!" "What?" Everybody around the table yelled at the same time. "Oh, please. If Trixie plays any type of class in D&D, it's going to be a bard mixed with a wizard based in illusion magic." "What are you doing, Rainbow?" said Twilight. "I thought you were making another daring do." Rainbow's grin threatened to tear her head in half. "Yeah, but I figure if I'm gonna die all the time, might as well do something I don't like." "Makes sense." Twilight stared at her for a few seconds, but then shrugged and said, "Well, you shouldn't have a very hard time getting yourself killed. As badly as everybody else is rolling against this spire, a spellcaster like Trixie won't last more than a couple of rounds." Her comment was punctuated by a round of nods, followed by hateful glares directed at the dice scattered on the table. Many dice would be held in dice jail that day. Me personally, whenever my dice start acting bad, I tend to drive them to an abandoned farm and leave them there. Permanently. "Spells? Nah, too much trouble. I wouldn't be a monk." Rarity scoffed. "You can't be serious. That seems rather out of character for Trixie." "Says the bard who broke her own instrument instead of drawing her sword. This isn't real Trixie, you know. This is my version of Trixie, and I just want to get her killed." "Okay, whatever," said Twilight. "Let's get back to the fight. Trixie has disappeared, and she's next in the turn order." "Make way for the crazy suicidal Trixie!" Trixie charged, carrying no weapons and no armor. "Trixie is right now trying to figure out if you're going to over the top on purpose." "Heaven forbid, Trix. Heaven forbid." Spire's mandible snapped at her as she closed in, but she danced around to attack and punched it in the head, smashing one of its eyes. The party of adventurers hobbled over to Barbarian to watch the interloper get herself slaughtered. Taking advantage of the respite, Noble Gem and Swirly Sparks helped Crusher out of his armor, while White Hose focused on casting healing spells. Meanwhile, the monk was holding her own. Flutters, barbarians don't need armor." Swearing loudly every time an attack missed her. One punch after another connected with the spider's outer shell, splintering large sections of the plate and covering her hose in foul smelly legs. "Hit me already, you stupid bug!" Trixie's yell was punctuated by a reckless move, spinning around and exposing her back to the enemy to bucket. Despite no longer being able to see her target, both her hind legs connected with his face forcefully enough to shatter an oak tree. Spider's head went flying into the branches. Twilight leaned over and put a hoof on Rainbow's shoulder. "Don't worry about it. You were due for some good luck. Maybe this had to happen eventually."
"Maybe so," muttered Rainbow Dash. "But it would have been nice if it was like Daring instead of Trixie."
"True, but you never made Daring a monk. Anyway, it wasn't really a big deal. You shouldn't be able to hold out long if you go face to face with a really tough enemy." Twilight withdrew her hoof and put the screen back up. As the flurry of punches collapsed the skull of a second mind flayer, Trixie looked across the room. The rest of the party was still engaged with the only remaining one. Crusher was enraged, but he still hadn't managed to do much damage. Swirly and Light were having more success, but the monster was far from done. Noble Gem, meanwhile, was constantly banging on a makeshift drum. Trixie tried over to the bar and,
"Noble, don't you think it would be a lot more helpful if you actually tried to hurt the monster, instead of giving every pony a headache of that thing?"
"I tried against that spider, and it cost me my favorite loot. I shan't be trying that again." Trixie rolled her eyes.
"You do know you have a sword, right?"
The drum beat stopped.
"I do."
"Yes," Trixie says. He ducked beneath the mind flayer's attempts to attack her from behind. A half-hearted buck tossed it back to the other side of the room.
"You will excuse me a moment, won't you?"
Noble Sim said, setting her drum down on some floor. She drew her sword and stepped past the monk, then waited for her turn to attack. After the barbarian and paladin did a little more damage to it, it's finally her throw to show a power of her magnificent weapon. Her gleaming longsword flashed through the air, sliced deeply into a leg. Her own leg. Without saying a word, she seized her weapon, limped away from the battle, returned to Trixie, and picked up her drum. I know the feeling. I know the feeling. Some days you go into the area wanting to be a badass, and the next thing you know, your Nat 1 fuzzes it up. Twilight scowled at the picture of a mind flayer before closing her book. "I'm not sure what else I could do to get Trixie killed. She's already being a giant spire and 2 mind flayers without any help."
"Come on, Twi! You can't let me get stuck with this character!"
Rainbow moaned, throwing her hose into the air. "I'm sorry, Rainbow, but sort of throwing Tarask at you, there's not much I can do. Why don't you have her commit suicide or just leave the group?" "You could always send a beholder."
No. Beholders are great against mage users, but we can't. But she's a physical fire.
You're right.
Daring Dude died 15 times last week. There's no way I'm gonna let Trixie be more awesome than Daring. She's gotta get killed by something.
Twilight's frown furrowed in concentration as she rested her chin on one of her hooves.
What would Matt Mercer do?
Several minutes passed, but in ponderous silence before she suddenly yelled, "I got it!" As Applejack and Rarity were coming back into the room with fresh drinks and snacks, causing them both to jump. "Nice reflex saves," Twilight said sheepishly. Applejack had narrowly avoided spilling all the glasses. Rarity caught the bowl of hay chips before it hit the floor. "Anyway, as I was saying, I could put together a nice little gauntlet dish to get Trixie killed in no time."
"Come along, every pony! The ignorant and misguided Trixie has decided we shall bypass the elf pony village. Instead, we shall brave the horrors of the dreaded labyrinth of blue mare murder!"
"Why not just send Trixie into the Tomb of Horrors? Let's see how long she survives against that." The rest of the party happily fell in line behind Trixie and delved into the map of the mouth of a conveniently placed cave, above which hung a sign saying, "Beware all ye who enter," and happened to be both blue and female. Inside, they found a roughly hewed passage, its walls adorned with paintings of pointed objects being thrust through pointy splotches of blue paint. The first trap was triggered almost immediately. Spikes sprang up from the floor directly underneath Trixie, but she leapt into the air and gracefully landed with her hooves atop their points. Once she had trotted across the field of deadly protrusions, they retracted into the floor. When the arrow trap failed, Trixie caught all the projectiles with a single hoof. The floor tried to fall from beneath her, sending her plummeting into a bottomless pit. But she effortlessly leapt to the other side. Over the next few minutes, she danced around poisoned spears, walked through fire without being burned, stopped a set of spinning blood blades with her bare hooves, and strangled a quarry eel. I am trying so hard not to laugh, people. I'm trying my best not to break. You can't see me, but I'm smiling. A cess on the ceiling fell upon her, but she caught it and held it up on her back, on the others to crawl through a narrow space. After they emerged from beneath the stone slab, Trixie stepped out under it, growling as it slammed to the floor with enough force to crush most ponies to the pace. She tried to take a step forward, but found herself held in place. A bit of her tail had been caught beneath the trap.
If you can't get free, he'll be stuck in the cave and you'll starve to death. Are you serious, Twy?
Said Rainbow.
That's not all you got left, is it? I have to agree,
said Rarity.
As assassination attempts go, this one's somewhat lacking.
Yeah, I reckon all we had to do was cut her tail off. Applejack made a quick slicing moment across her own tail.
Hey, she's already beaten every trap I've got. I'm grasping at straws here. So while cutting her free is possible, I'm going to make you roll some intelligence checks to see if any of your characters happen to think about it. I'm setting the difficulty for this check at 35.
Twy said with a wry grin, earning similar grins from her friends as they realized he could only pass the test by rolling a 20, thus succeeding automatically. I would say something about skill checks and net 20s, but I'm afraid that might get me assaulted by the DM's Guild and Den of the Drake. 5 dice hit the table at once.
Oh yeah, totally failed that roll,
Rainbow bragged. Applejack smirked. I'm a mile under that too.
So am I,
said Fluttershy. Rarity shook her head, graying down at the 500 die. All eyes turned to Pinkie Pie, who cradled her die in a foreleg, hiding from view.
Sorry, Eerie Pony,
Pinkie said softly. She slowly moved her leg from the die. As it came into view, her face split into a trademark grin. The result was a nat 1.
I'm a complete idiot.
Laughter soon faded until I put her screen back up. Okay, no pony thought to cut off her tail, so Trixie's stuck here. I'll suffer a slow, agonizing death, unless her tail is actually strong enough to shatter a rock, that is. The rock shattered as Trixie flexed her tail.
The crazy suicidal Trixie is not amused.
Trixie grumbled to no one in particular. The rest of the party were too busy gawking at the rubble to listen. You know, the easy solution to all of this is give Trixie a deck of many things and have her draw 12. At some point, she's got to draw the void. Noble Gem was first to recover from her shock.
Darling, don't let it get you down. You were so close this time. Perhaps we'd be fortunate to run into some horribly unbalanced monster within this cave. You'd be done improperly. Yes, Trixie supposes you're right.
Ah, girl, you know, fate has it in for you, said Lighthost. I reckon it's just a matter of time before it throws something at you can't even beat. The party stepped out of the cave into the sunlight, only to be greeted by the sight of a towering, bull-like abomination, covered in a dull black carapace, sporting a wide mouth of sharp teeth that could chew half a dozen ponies at once. 4 of the 5 adventurers went right back into the tunnel. The beast fell to the ground. Its shattered carapace oozed foul-smelling fluids, particularly at spots where its head was where its own several horns had been driven through its skull. The intensely gray and altogether unstoppable Trixie stood in solemn triumph over her vanquished foe.
Stupid, underpowered, ultimate enemy,
she says. He lets out his dead face, punching a host-sized hole between its eyes. Hey, I saw a bunch of adventurers manage to take out Tarrasque with a pebble. Thanks to Brownie D&D, I'm not afraid of it anymore. Having utterly crushed the will of fate, the warrior turned back to the cave. Her friends already emerged where they were approaching the carcass. Trixie opened her mouth to speak, but was silenced by the appearance of a bright glow behind her, which bathed the entire field in simmering blue light. She turned to see a small orb of iridescent energy rising up through the last hole she made in the monster's face.
Oh, I know what that is! That's the Tarrasque's life force. In you straighten out, it'll be gone forever. Otherwise, it'll go back to its body. Then the monster will sink into the ground and sleep for a few hundred years. Whatever. The monk muttered. Doesn't matter if it comes back or not. You can't beat Trixie unless...
Her frown slowly reversed, and her lips split into a grin.
You have an idea? Said Cresser. Indeed I do. What to learn? The stupid reckless Trixie shall snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
Trixie stepped forward towards the light. Strands of blue life force tickled her nose as she took a deep breath. Then, after barely a moment's hesitation, she lunged toward the orb and took a bite out of it.
You didn't.
No way. The dice clattered heavily into the library's floor.
Yeah, that's why I did. I totally did.
Rainbow's words were choked up between peals of laughter.
There's no way Trixie can survive eating something like that, right?
Twilight laid down her screen and neatly folded it up. The book in front of her was showing her a picture of Tarask, along with stats and other information only the Game Master should know.
Rainbow, I have good news and bad news for you. The good news is that Trixie is gone forever. You can never play hers again.
Rainbow Dash let down her hose and strutted around the table.
Oh yeah! Who's the bear? Who's the bear?
Twilight cleared her throat to bring the attention of the table back to herself.
As for the bad news, you just turned her into a goddess. I hate this game,
said Rainbow, but none of her friends could hear it over their own laughter.
I hate to admit it, but when I got my PS2, the first DVD I ever got for it, was it something cool like Lord of the Rings? Was it something epic or anything like that? It was the Dungeons and Dragons movie. Like I say, it looked cool, it sounded interesting, and I thought it'd be fun to get. Remember, fantasy fan. And I didn't know any better. So, I bought it. Curious about if it told me anything about the game. It kind of did. You see, the DVD had something fun. You got to solve a puzzle in order to get through the special features. I did. Apparently, you also had to watch the movie in order to figure out how to solve the puzzle. I did not. And it told me all about the history of Dungeons and Dragons. How it came to be. What was it like? What did it mean? And all these other tidbits like, you could play, it's like using your imagination. It's like creating your own character and all that. All that stuff that intrigued me. Making me want more and more to play the game. Sad part is, in high school, I didn't have that much to play. Like, the only time I actually got to roleplay or do any character creation was when one of my high school friends had this insane idea to do a roleplay session before class start. And we only had 30 minutes to play. I know, right? Like, you can't get anything done in that time. So my dreams of playing D&D or anything like that were shot short. I watched the movie a few times. Didn't understand all the deviants from the game. I do now. Grrr. Stupid using beholders as puppies. But I still had a lot of fun. It was interesting to watch the documentary, learn about how it got here and where we came from, and I became less fair to play after they basically told me it's like just playing pretend and using your imagination and creating stories. Hell, I had been doing that all the time, playing with my action figures, creating stories with them, or just simply walking by myself, creating stories all the time, creating new characters and things like that. So, I graduated and went to community college. And that, dear children, is where the rest of the story and the rest of my connection to D&D begins.